During the extreme heat apocalypse, the water I worked so hard to find was generously given away to our neighbors by my adoptive parents. They were praised by everyone, while I became the selfish, ungrateful wretch in their eyes. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the time before the apocalypse. Faced with the neighbors' pleas, I generously invited everyone to our house as guests. It's just playing the kind-hearted saint, right? I can do that too. Sister, you won't be mad that I shared the water, right? Xiao San and I have known each other for years. I couldn't just watch her die of thirst. I am truly an ungrateful wretch in their eyes. We've been neighbors for so long. What's wrong with sharing some water? It's just water, just go out and find more when we run out. I'm ordering you to find more water by tonight. Or don't bother coming back home. The shouting made my head ache. I snapped my eyes open, only to find myself lying in the cramped storage room. The scenes from my dream were too bizarre. Temperatures reaching hundreds of degrees had lasted for 3 whole months without stopping. The entire world had completely shut down. To survive, humans had to venture out to find drinking water, but I never expected that. The water I risked my life to bring back would be given away to the neighbors by my adoptive parents. In the end, my adoptive parents sold me to a pervert for the price of 2 bottles of water. I became his daily blood harvesting tool. In my nightmare, I endured the scorching heat every day just to find water for my adoptive family. But because I was reluctant to share the water with outsiders, I was branded as selfish. Meanwhile, my adoptive mother, Zhao Chunling, raised her own twins to be plump and healthy, while beating and scolding me, her bot daughter. My adoptive father, Li Yuke, pretended to be fair, but ultimately kicked me out of the house. As for the twins, Haokui and Haoming, the sister was a two-faced hypocrite, and the brother was a lovesick fool. Both loved using other people's things to showcase their own kindness. I rubbed my forehead, got up, and walked out of the storage room. My eyes fell on a lottery ticket on the table, and my breath hitched. In my dream, this ticket bought by Li Yuke was only one final digit away from the 30 million grand prize. I quietly took a photo of it, put it back, and headed toward the lottery shop. My heart was pounding. I would soon find out if my dream was real or not. That evening, I curled up on my narrow single bed, clutching 9 lottery tickets with different final digits. I was the lowest existence in this house, so I had no right to watch TV. I could only prick up my ears to listen to the sounds outside. Soon, the grand prize numbers were announced. The hand holding my tickets trembled violently. I won. The prize was 30 million. After taxes, I would have 24 million. My tense nerves finally relaxed completely. At 5 a.m. the next morning, the sun was already glaringly hot. Someone viciously kicked my flimsy door. Haoming said impatiently, "I'm starving, aren't you going to get up and cook?" I silently got up, went to the kitchen, and prepared breakfast. I picked out my most inconspicuous clothes to wear out. Before I left, Zhao Chunling stopped me and transferred 200 yuans to me. "It's too hot today. Bring back some ice cream cake for your brother and sister. Get their usual flavors. Don't waste the leftover money. Bring the change back to me." I nodded, turned around, and walked out the door. When I was little, I used to cry and make a fuss, asking why she bought treats for them but not for me. "Because they are younger than you." That excuse was used for 20 years. Later, I understood there was no need for an excuse. They simply didn't love me. Back then, Li Yuke and his wife couldn't have children, so they bought me from human traffickers. Who knew that just a few months later, Zhao Chunling would get pregnant with twins? From then on, my treatment in the house plummeted because of the massive prize amount. I had to travel to the provincial capital to claim it. The 24 million soon arrived in my bank account. I didn't dare stay out too long. I bought the exact ice cream cake Zhao Chunling wanted and headed home. That night, joyous laughter echoed from the living room. I lay on my small bed, calculating how to use my 24 million. You shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. So the funds needed to be divided. After all, once the extreme heat apocalypse ended, humanity would have to return to normal life. I didn't feel safe leaving all my money in the bank. Who knows if banks would go bankrupt after the apocalypse? So, I decided to exchange 2 million for physical gold to keep on hand. Withdraw 1 million in cash for emergencies. Leave 2 million in the bank. And use the remaining 18 million to rent safe houses and hoard supplies. Wandering around outside all day without finding a job. Do you know what the neighbors are saying about you? Zhao Chunling poked my forehead hard. Her face full of disappointment. To keep her from noticing anything unusual, I endured over an hour of her complaining. The moment I walked out the door, I let out a deep breath. They did technically raise me. Which one do you prefer? I'll show you around, looking at the villas before me. My eyes landed on the very last one. The deeper into the community, the cheaper they were. The rent for this innermost one was only 50,000 a month, fully furnished and ready to move in. I signed a 1-year lease on the spot. The agent left after recording my fingerprints. I immediately contacted a renovation team. I initially only planned to apply a layer of thermal insulation paint to the walls and install some solar panels, but I stumbled upon a pleasant surprise. Is this an air raid shelter? Looks like a storage room to me. Boss, if you're worried, I can go in with you to check it out. I stared at the pitch-black opening. That was exuding a continuous stream of cold air, keeping my face completely expressionless. If this was a real air raid shelter when the apocalypse hits, wouldn't this be a free, natural air-conditioned room? But if I let others know about it now, no matter who it is, my risk would increase drastically. Let's ignore it for now. I don't need that much space anyway. Just finished the work on the outside, I suppressed the joy in my heart. Once the workers finished and left, I turned on my phone's flashlight and explored the cave alone. The space inside was massive and seemingly bottomless. I touched the wall. It felt slightly damp. A constant cool breeze blew from within, making me shiver despite the scorching summer heat outside. That very afternoon, I bought 1,000 bags of lime water because the cave was too deep and time was tight. I could only temporarily coat the areas I would use for living and storage. I also placed a massive amount of desiccants around. This air raid shelter was at least a century old. Outsiders were unlikely to know about it. This vastly improved my safety guarantees. Seeing that it was getting dark, I locked the doors and windows and headed home. The Lee family lived in an apartment building directly across from the villa area. You could see it right from our window. Zhao Chunling would often complain about Lee UK's incompetence, saying the family could only drool at the luxury villas across the street, never at home. Do you have a $10 million business deal waiting for you out there? Zhao Chunling rolled her eyes at me angrily. I kept my face blank. Little did she know, it really was a $10 million deal. Now I had to carefully think about how to best spend this $18 million. After cooking dinner for the family as usual, I went back to my room to list the supplies I needed. In just 1 week, the temperatures would skyrocket. Daytime highs would reach a terrifying degree. And that was only the apocalypse I had experienced. It wasn't even the peak of the extreme heat. Recalling the scenes from my past life, I pursed my lips. I knew there was still so much to prepare. With so many people in the villa area, hoarding supplies entirely unnoticed was almost impossible. And once my supplies were exposed, there would be endless trouble. My only option was to use the renovation as an excuse, smuggling supplies mixed with construction materials, or leaving some supplies in plain sight in the villa. Once people looted the upper floor, the underground shelter would be truly safe. In my past life, the heat wave lasted 3 months without stopping. I had no idea how long it would last this time, so I had to prepare as much as possible. I first wrote out a massive shopping list. First was food. Most people's first instinct might be to hoard rice and flour, but those are raw materials. Cooking them requires fuel and water. Plus, rice and flour easily attract bugs. Hoarding too much wasn't practical. So, I specified 200 caddies of flour and 500 caddies of wash-free rice. Also, 1,000 caddies of mixed grains, 200 caddies each of rice noodles, vermicelli, and potato noodles, 200 caddies each of egg noodles, dragon beard noodles, and handmade noodles in vacuum packaging, 777 boxes each of instant noodles, self-heating hot pots, and self-heating rice, ham, bread, beef jerky, chocolate, biscuits, powdered milk, walnut milk, canned porridge, various nuts, and freeze-dried fruits and vegetables. 888 boxes of every flavor, Spam, compression biscuits, canned beef, and canned tuna 999 boxes of each. I could buy less fresh produce, but I needed to hoard at least 5 years' worth of everything else. I stockpiled 5,000 boxes of long shelf-life bottled water and 100 large water cooler jugs. Once the main food orders were placed, it was time for daily necessities: clothes, bedsheets, disposable underwear, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, body wash, toilet paper, and sanitary pads. Even though some things might expire and go bad, hoarding more now is better than regretting it later. Most importantly, I hoarded 3,000 boxes of wet wipes. I could use them to clean my whole body. At 4:00 a.m. the next day, the sun was already blindingly bright. I sighed. This storage room was incredibly stuffy and hot. The weather app showed today's high would be terrifying. Looking at it made my heart race. I never imagined the future would get even hotter. Resigned, I got out of bed. Zhao Chunling was awake too. Seeing me obediently head to the kitchen to make breakfast, she curled her lip, unable to find any reason to scold me. After eating, I headed straight to the wholesale market. I bought everything on my list and scheduled delivery times with the vendors. Although the villa had solar panels, under hundreds of degrees of heat, who knew if those panels would even work? So, I picked out 20 silent generators, bought 3,000 cases of gasoline as backup, and ordered 50 portable air coolers and compact freezers. I also ordered 888 boxes of portable gas stoves, butane canisters, and solid alcohol fuel. Then came self-defense tools, baseball bats, retractable tactical knives, and axes. Finally, I went to the pharmacy for essential medicines, especially Huaxiang Zhenki liquid, cooling oil, and fever cooling patches. I bought 10,000 boxes of each. That afternoon, I received the deliveries at the villa. For safety, I had the deliveryman unload everything in the living room and leave immediately. I then personally carried all the supplies down into the air raid shelter. By nightfall, I had only moved a fifth of it. I picked up my phone. It was filled with unread messages from Zhao Chunling, demanding to know why I wasn't home to cook. Knowing I'd just be scolded if I went back, I replied, "I'm taking extra shifts at the supermarket for 200 a day. I'll be back in a few days, then work hard," she replied. "Don't waste the money. When you get back, I'll help you put it in the bank," accompanied by the cool breeze from the air conditioner. I had a rare good night's sleep. By the time I woke up the next day, it was noon. The sun outside was toxic. Opening the curtains, the first sensation was blinding brightness. I quickly pulled them shut and checked the weather forecast. The temperature had surged again. It was higher than yesterday. Opening the door, rolling waves of heat hit my face, feeling like it would melt me. Unexplainable panic set in. They say a crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. The villa's shelter was hidden. But what if something went wrong? I couldn't gamble. So, while continuing to move supplies into the cave, I searched online for other available rentals nearby. Luckily, I managed to rent a first-floor apartment directly across from the Lee family's building. A 70-square-meter unit that came with a connected 20-square-meter basement. The basement had 5-meter-high ceilings and opened directly into the underground parking lot. I paid a year's rent upfront. Since no one was using same-city delivery at night, I spent another $500,000 on basic supplies to be delivered there. Oh my. Shang, buying so many things. That must have cost a fortune, right? Grandma Wang from downstairs looked shocked. It was just a few thousand, Grandma. With the weather this hot, I don't feel safe without hoarding some food, I replied with a smile. As I led the deliveryman toward the elevator. On the way, I bumped into several neighbors coming home from work. They didn't say anything, but their faces showed obvious mockery. I lowered my head, hiding the smirk on my lips. I specifically timed my return during rush hour so they would all see that the Lee family had a massive hoard of supplies. In this life, I was going to play the ultimate saint and give them a good show. I'm dying of heat. It's been well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit for a week straight. Are we supposed to just die? Hao Ming slumped on the sofa, his sweaty fat trembling as he lay there, cursing non-stop. Right then, phones chimed. A notification popped up in the residential group chat. Due to extreme high temperatures, the neighborhood supermarket will suspend operations for 3 days starting tomorrow. We deeply apologize for the inconvenience this may cause to everyone's daily lives. Please make preparations in advance. Even the supermarket is closing? Zhao Chunling frowned instinctively. No one wants to work, of course it's closing. Li UK actually shot me a rare look of approval. Good thing Shang bought enough supplies in advance, or our family would be screwed right now. Hearing this, I flashed a flattering smile. In my past life, braving the hellish temperatures, I went to the supermarket to haul back 2 cases of water, getting severe sunburns in the process. Li UK still cursed me for being selfish when I refused to give that water to the neighbors. This time, I really wanted to see if their family could remain as selfless as before. The temperature kept climbing. By 11 o'clock a.m., the heat was unimaginable. Air conditioners had long become useless decorations. I was cooking in the kitchen when the range hood suddenly hummed and died. The power went out. I can't take this. A power outage on a day this hot. Are we just supposed to wait for death? At that same moment, ambulance sirens wailed downstairs. It was the fifth emergency call today. By evening, I lay on my small bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep due to the heat. My phone constantly refreshed with news of people dropping dead from the heat. Someone published a statistic. In just a few hours, hospitals had received tens of thousands of heatstroke patients, and those were only the ones who were found and sent for treatment in time. As for those who weren't found, under the extreme heat, their bodies rotted incredibly fast. To prevent this situation, property management started checking on residents every morning and evening. Brother Meng, my house is completely out of water. Could I borrow some? A female classmate came to our door, her face red. Hao Meng's heart melted instantly. Zhao Chunling, to maintain her kind-hearted image, quickly brought out water and drinks from the kitchen. Andy, you're so wonderful. Only you are willing to lend me water. Your whole family are the kindest people I've ever met. Zhao Zan's barrage of flattery had Zhao Chunling grinning from ear to ear. Li Yuk frowned, but caring more about his reputation than anything else, he didn't ask her to leave. I stared at the severe sunburn on Zhao Zan's face, and the corners of my mouth curled up. Your face is badly sunburned, isn't it? I remember Haokui has a bottle of premium sunscreen. Go get it for Zhao San to use. Why should I? I saved up my allowance for ages to buy that. I don't even bear to use it myself. It's just a cheap bottle of cream. What's the big deal? Your classmates, don't be so stingy. If you act like this, who will ever want to be your friend? Seeing Hao Ming getting increasingly out of line, Li Yuk's face darkened. Shang, is that how you speak to your sister? And Haokui, go get your stupid bottle and bring it out. Under the pressure of the head of the house, Haokui didn't dare resist. She had to obediently go to her room and comply. That night, to comfort Haokui, Zhao Chunling deliberately skipped me when handing out bread. I didn't care. I went straight back to my room and locked the door, because just moments ago, my phone surveillance app started flashing wildly. Someone had broken into my villa. A group of young men wearing property management uniforms openly smashed the door in. One of them looked incredibly smug. I told you this place hoarded a ton of goods. And the owner isn't even here. It's all ours now. Cut the crap and start moving things. This much stuff will feed us for a long time. In the living room, the supplies I intentionally left behind were a mixed bag. This gang spent 4 whole hours before finally emptying the living room. After the management staff left, several other shadowy figures snuck into the villa under the cover of night, only to return empty-handed. Watching the supplies I had worked so hard to hoard get robbed, I actually breathed a sigh of relief. Now that the villa supplies were visibly looted in front of so many people, the neighbors' attention on the villa would drop significantly. According to reports, the temperature at the equator broke records again yesterday, reaching unprecedented extremes. Yesterday, a massive wildfire broke out in the world's largest forest park. The fire has burned for a week and still hasn't been extinguished, turning everything into scorched earth. Experts say domestic temperatures will continue to rise over the next month. Residents are advised to take protective measures and avoid going outside unless absolutely necessary. Reading the endless push notifications on my phone, I couldn't help but feel dizzy and nauseous. With the temperature climbing ever higher, it was clearly reaching the absolute limits of human endurance. I quickly downed a bottle of Huaxiang Zhenqi liquid and rubbed cooling oil on my pulse points to help my body dissipate heat. Outside the door, Zhao Chunling couldn't help but complain to Li Yuk. So weird. Why have so many people been asking me for supplies these past 2 days? I don't even know them. I got a lot of private messages too. Just ignore them, Li Yuke replied. Shang. Your brother and sister are young. I'm taking them to the basement to escape the heat. You stay here and watch the house. I know exactly how many supplies we have left. Don't you dare sneak any bites. Xiao Chunling's warning came from outside. Sneak a bite? I've endured their abuse right under their noses for this long. Just for today, after the whole family left, I walked into the kitchen. All the remaining supplies they had were right here. I sent a mass message to the neighbors who had been begging for supplies in the group chat. Come to 704, we have supplies we can share with you, very quickly. Over a dozen homeowners dragged their families to 704. I generously brought out the food and water. Eat as much as you want, everyone. There are plenty of supplies in the kitchen. Seeing the food piled from the kitchen to the living room, everyone's eyes went red with greed when Li Yuke and his family finally returned. The living room was littered with garbage. Seeing the premium meat cans that they couldn't even bear to eat themselves opened and empty on the floor, Xiao Chunling's face turned incredibly ugly. I pretended to be terrified and asked timidly, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I saw how pitiful everyone was, and I couldn't help but share some of our food with them. Please don't be mad at me. Hearing this, the crowd's gaze toward Li Yuke and his wife instantly changed. Xiao Chunling clearly didn't expect me to say that. She had to swallow back the curses that were on her lips. Just calculate the price of these foods, and we'll give you the money. Just consider it as us buying them. Yeah, you two shouldn't blame Shang. She meant well. Trying to buy apocalyptic food at its original price? Do they think we are idiots? Everyone knows the supermarkets are closed, and you couldn't buy supplies even if you had money. Li Yuke suppressed his fury. He also knew that hoarding massive amounts of supplies right now made him a prime target. He had to force a fake smile. What is this child saying? Helping each other is the right thing to do. You helped so many people, we are very proud, really? That's wonderful. I knew Mom and Dad were kind-hearted people. I forced down the smirk forming on my lips. Listening to them praise me over and over for being so beautiful and kind. Turns out, playing the saint feels amazing. Early the next morning, I was startled awake by Zhao Chunling's scream, opening my door. I saw the living room packed with people again. Seeing Haokui standing among the crowd, I couldn't help but let my lips curl up. She must have seen me stealing the spotlight yesterday and decided to copy me, inviting so many guests over first thing in the morning. But the people she invited this time were clearly much more shameless. They ate and took everything they could, leaving the Li family with only a few bottles of water and instant noodles when they left. Li Yuke and his wife were too obsessed with their reputation to stop them, actually allowing them to walk away with the supplies. The moment the crowd left, Li Yuke raised his hand and slapped Haokui hard across the face. I instinctively covered my own face. Even through a door, I could feel his skyrocketing fury. Haokui looked up in disbelief. Dad, why did you hit me? Because you deserved it. Do you even know what kind of people they are, bringing them into our home? Yesterday Shang invited outsiders too. Why did you only hit me? Brilliant. A perfect move to redirect the anger. Sure enough, Li Yuke's attention shifted, afraid that the two of them would storm into the storage room to give me a brutal double beating. I simply held up my phone and walked out. The RT Mart outside the neighborhood is open. I still have some money left. I should go hoard some more supplies. Saying that, I headed for the door. Going out for supplies was just an excuse. I saw the house was almost empty. So I found a reason to leave. I couldn't stay in the Lee household anymore once they came to their senses. Who knows what they do? I glanced at my phone. Outdoor temperature, unimaginably high. It was the highest recorded temperature yet. Waves of heat viciously invaded my body. Every pore on my skin felt like it was about to explode. I staggered toward the villa area. The streets were completely empty, save for a few charred, human-shaped corpses. From the Lee family apartment to the villa was barely 800 meters. But it took me 40 whole minutes. The moment I pushed open the villa doors, I nearly collapsed. The living room was a disaster. That property management gang took everything they could carry. Not a single crumb was left. I bolted the door and stumbled toward the entrance of the air raid shelter. Pushing open the hidden trapdoor, a rush of cold air poured out. My body fell heavily onto the dry concrete floor of the shelter. I was finally alive again. I got up, slumped onto the sofa, and chugged 3 bottles of water before I recovered. Looking down at my arms, the exposed skin was already covered in heat blisters. If I had delayed even a second longer, I wouldn't have escaped death either. Thinking of the Lee family, I took out my phone and connected to their home cameras to monitor Zhao Chunling's family at all times. I had spent a small fortune buying solar-powered micro cameras. In the afternoon, several shameless neighbors came over to borrow more supplies. Unfortunately, the gang Haokui invited had already eaten or taken almost everything. What was left wasn't even enough for themselves, let alone giving it to others as charity. In this life, facing his 2 equally beloved children fighting to the death, I wondered what choice Lee UK would make. Closing the surveillance app, I sucked on a popsicle while the air cooler blew comfortably on my face. However, I could still feel the cave's temperature slowly rising. Although it was vastly better than the hellish 500-degree surface, the temperature was rising faster than I remembered. I needed to find a solution. Otherwise, this cave would eventually become an oven too. After looking around, my gaze finally landed on the deepest part of the air raid shelter. It was pitch black and seemingly endless. Perhaps the deeper I went, the cooler it would be. Thinking this, I strapped on my emergency backpack and involuntarily walked deeper inside. As I ventured further, the temperature indeed steadily dropped. 10 minutes later, a stone door appeared at the end of the cave. The rough stone slab was embedded in the cave wall, with a gap running around its edges. I leaned in closer. Strange, rune-like patterns were carved into it. It was bone-chillingly cold to the touch. I pushed it hard. The moment I pressed it, the stone door suddenly ripped open like a tear in space. The edges glowed with a faint blue light, and freezing air rushed madly from the rift. I tentatively tossed a rock inside. The rock passed through the rift and vanished. I waited a few minutes. No reaction. I threw in a piece of toilet paper. The paper floated into the darkness and also disappeared. What the hell was this thing? I walked around the cave walls. Aside from the bizarre rift, I found several crystals emitting blue light in the corner. The instant I touched them, the severe heat blisters on my arms vanished without a trace. Excitedly, I stuffed all the crystals into my backpack, preparing to return to the living area to study them. Just as I turned around, The rift suddenly emitted a blinding, eerie blue light. When I opened my eyes, a small, thin figure stumbled out, holding a dagger made of solid ice. His face was red from the cold, his lips cracked, and he vigilantly scanned his surroundings. It was painfully obvious that he was suffering from extreme dehydration. So, I took a bag of bread and 2 bottles of water from my backpack and tossed them to him. The boy's eyes lit up at the sight of food and water. He practically snatched the bottle and chugged it down greedily. Only after eating and drinking his fill did he look up, staring at me with those ice blue eyes. "It's so warm here. And there is liquid water and food. Are you a fairy?" The boy hugged his arms tight, seemingly uncomfortable in my warm environment. Only then did I notice that the freezing air pouring from the rift behind him had dropped the temperature of the entire shelter by at least 10 degrees. "Where did you come from, fairy sister?" "I live in Frostfall Town. The temperature there is always around minus 150 degrees. I was hunting ice rats. I don't know how I ended up here." Before he finished speaking, the rift began vibrating violently. The blue light flickered rapidly. The boy's body started distorting, being pulled back toward the cave. "I think I have to go home. Can I come find you next time?" A flash of inspiration hit me. I turned, sprinted to the storage area, grabbed a case of water and 5 self-heating hot pots, and threw them to the boy. He was stunned for a second, then understood my intention. A bright smile bloomed on his frostbitten face. "Fairy sister, my name is Ahan. Tomorrow at the same time, I'll bring our local specialties to trade for food." Hugging the supplies, he vanished into the rift. The wall returned to normal. I stood there, my heart pounding wildly. I touched the blue crystals in my backpack. They were still icy cold. I wasn't dreaming, just as I wanted to study them. My surveillance app sent multiple alerts, tapping the screen. The footage of the Lee family appeared. "Where is the water? Didn't we hide 3 bottles yesterday?" Lee UK was tearing the place apart, kicking the wall in a furious rage. Haokui cowered in the corner of the sofa. She whispered, "Yesterday Zhao-san said her grandmother had heat stroke, so while you were sleeping, brother took 2 bottles of water to her." "Then what about the last bottle?" Xiao Chunling shrieked at her daughter. I saw Grandma Wang was pitiful, so I gave her half a bottle." Haokui's voice grew smaller and smaller. Xiao Chunling collapsed into a chair, gasping heavily for air, unable to process it. Lee UK, burning with rage, hoarsely ordered Haoming to get out of the house. Instead, Haoming turned without a word and charged into his room. Minutes later, he walked toward the door carrying a bulging bag. It contained the family's absolute last reserves: 5 packs of compression biscuits, 3 boxes of chocolate, and the half bottle of water Zhao Chunling had just hidden. "Meng, put those things down." Zhao Chunling lunged at him, but he shoved her away violently. She crashed into the corner of the table. Blood immediately poured from her forehead. Seeing this, Lee UK tried to step forward. But Haoming pulled a dagger from his waist, his eyes bloodshot as he roared, "Whoever steps forward, I'll fight you to the death." With that, he opened the door and bolted into the boiling hallway. Zhao Chunling clutched her bleeding forehead, sitting on the floor wailing uncontrollably. Lee UK stared at the closed door, then at the ruined living room, suddenly looking like he had aged 10 years. Haokui quickly dug out the first aid kit, frantically trying to bandage her mother's wound. The moment the cotton swab touched the wound, Zhao Chunling slapped her hand away. "Be gentle. Are you trying to kill me with pain?" Haokui retreated to the side aggrieved. She muttered softly, "It's not like I'm the one who pushed you. What did you say? Am I wrong?" He took the very last bit of food we had. Are you happy now? How dare you speak to your mother like that? Li Yuk suddenly stood up violently. But his body went stiff. And he crashed straight to the floor. He already had severe heart issues. He probably never imagined he would be literally angered to death by his own children. Looking at her father dead beside her, and her mother sobbing on the floor. Haokui suddenly revealed a twisted, insane smile. She picked up the heavy ashtray beside her and smashed it brutally into the back of the defenseless Zhao Chunling's head. "Mom, don't blame me. I heard the human body is 70% water. You want me to survive too, right?" She then dragged the unconscious Zhao Chunling toward the bathroom. This time, the usually noisy and lively apartment 704 fell completely silent. My stomach churned. I shut off the monitor. Unable to watch any further, the Li family's ending was their own doing. As night fell, the temperature in the shelter remained at a comfortable 26 degrees Celsius. I cooked a bowl of extremely spicy cheese noodles, adding a braised egg and sausage. I ate while I waited. Exactly at 11 o'clock p.m. The deep end of the cave once again glowed with that eerie blue light. The rift slowly opened and a Han appeared. This time, he carried a massive animal skin bundle. He pulled a pile of things out of it. "Fairy sister, can I trade these for water and food?" He laid out 5 blue crystals, 3 yellowed scrolls, a shivering little beast, and some unfamiliar plant roots. "These are ice crystals. They are hard currency where we're from. Holding them maintains body temperature, and grinding them into powder cures frostbite. This is a preservation scroll. If you stick it to any container, the items inside won't spoil for a year. These are snow yams. They're crisp and sweet raw, and very filling." He then poked the little beast. The small creature let out a chirp and puffed out a small cloud of white, freezing air. "This is an ice lizard. It breathes cold air." I picked up a preservation scroll. It felt like parchment, covered in complex patterns. I then touched the ice lizard. The little guy was only the size of a hand, covered in fine, soft fuzz. "I'll take them all." I immediately pushed forward the prepared supplies: 2 cases of water, 10 cans of meat, 5 packs of self-heating rice, and a pile of chocolate, biscuits, and instant noodles over to a Han. What we lack the least here is food, but we desperately need things that cool things down. "Can you bring more ice crystals and these scrolls in the future? I can trade food with you long term." Looking at the mountain of food, a Han nodded vigorously. "We lack food the most. Snow yams can fill our stomachs, but eating them too long makes us weak and sick. With all this, my sister won't starve to death this winter." Before he could finish, the rift vibrated violently again. "Time's up." A Han hurriedly stuffed the supplies into his bundle, waving goodbye with a bright smile before the rift closed. I picked up an ice crystal and held it in my hand. A refreshing, cool sensation spread through my arm to my whole body. It felt so good I let out a sigh. I then tried sticking a scroll onto a storage crate full of vegetables. With a flash of light, the scroll melted into the box and vanished. I opened the crate. The cabbage that had started to wilt was now crisp, green, and tender, with droplets of fresh water on the leaves. Treating the ice lizard like a treasure, I placed it on the sofa. Once it adapted to the temperature, it became active, crawling around on the cushions. puffing cold air every now and then. The shelter's temperature dropped another 2 degrees. That night, I slept incredibly well. At 6 o'clock a.m. the next morning, the outdoor thermometer read a staggering 387 degrees. But down here, it was a pleasant 26 degrees. I washed up and leisurely cooked a bowl of shrimp wontons for breakfast. During the day, I organized the rest of my supplies and experimented with different ways to activate the ice crystal's cooling effects. That evening, I cooked a pot of snow yam and cured meat rice. The cooked snow yam released wisps of white, cool air. It was sweet and crisp. When swallowed, a refreshing coolness coated my throat. This was the ultimate luxury in an apocalypse. That night, the rift opened right on time. Ahan brought even more items this time. 20 ice crystals, 10 preservation scrolls, 2 ice lizards, and a bag of crystal clear ice rice. This is cold bone rice. It naturally produces cool air. Only nobles in our world can afford it. I traded the chocolate you gave me for this. I gave him even more food than before. Adding canned fruit and a massive bag of candy. How cold does it get during your winters? At its coldest, minus 150 degrees. Every winter, people freeze and starve to death. Last year in our village, less than half the people survived. I was silent. The heat apocalypse and the cold apocalypse, both were literal hells. What about these ice lizards? What do they eat? They eat anything. As long as it can go in their mouths, they'll eat it. The more they eat, the faster they grow. When they are fully grown, a single ice lizard can keep a room at a perfectly comfortable temperature. After sending Ahan off, I began planning for the future. The air raid shelter was safe, but it was just a hiding spot. If the extreme heat persisted, I would need more space, more resources, reliable partners. And those ice crystals. If they could stably reduce the temperature, maybe I could build a truly comfortable post-apocalyptic haven. The 3 ice lizards grew very fast. They had grown from hand size to the size of cats. I used 5 preservation scrolls, sticking them onto the crates storing vegetables, fruits, meat, medicines, and books. One evening, I was cooking the ice rice. When cooked, every grain was crystal clear and emitted threads of white, cold air. Just as I was blissfully immersed in this culinary world, my phone began vibrating frantically. Then, the alarm systems for the entire villa complex went off. I rushed to the monitors, witnessing a shocking scene. The main gates had been smashed open, and over 100 people surged in. They were dressed in rags, their eyes filled with madness, carrying all sorts of weapons. They smashed every door and window in sight. Screams and the sound of destruction echoed everywhere, because my villa was deep inside. It hadn't been targeted yet, but the mob was moving in my direction. I calmly shut off all lights, locked the shelter entrance, picked up an ice lizard, and sat before the monitors, gripping a tactical knife tightly. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a familiar face in the crowd. It was Haoming. He was still alive. He was holding an iron pipe, his face twisted with excitement, shouting something to the crowd, leading them straight toward my villa. This is the house. Cold air has been seeping out of it lately. They must have working air conditioning. The crowd instantly boiled over. They raised their weapons and began smashing my doors wildly. I gripped my knife tighter, but without me noticing, one of the ice lizards had slinked over to the window, curiously observing the frenzied mob outside. Someone caught a glimpse of it and gasped, What the hell is that thing? Who cares what it is? Smash the window and let's get in. The iron pipe smashed heavily against the glass, the cracks spider-webbed. The ice lizard, startled by the noise, let out a sharp shriek and spewed a massive cloud of freezing white mist. The cold air surged out through the cracks. The people at the front instantly shivered. It's so cold. They really do have air conditioning in there. This drove them even more insane. Haoming pushed his way to the very front, using all his strength to smash the glass. Shards rained down. But at that very moment, the ice lizard shrieked again. This time, it shot out thousands of tiny, razor-sharp ice shards. The shards fired through the broken window like a shotgun blast. Standing right at the front, Haoming's face and body were shredded with countless bloody gashes. He screamed and collapsed to the ground, clutching his face. Monsters! There are monsters inside! Some screamed and backed away, but more were blinded by the promise of coolness and food. Charging forward recklessly, I immediately pulled out all my ice crystals. Found a spray bottle, filled it with water. Ground 5 ice crystals into powder, mixed it in and walked to the breach. Aiming at the mob outside, I pressed the nozzle. The mist, combined with the high-concentration ice crystal powder, rapidly condensed in the air, forming a zone of freezing, sub-zero fog. Those who rushed into the fog felt bone-piercing cold. Unable to withstand the extreme temperature shock, the crowd broke and scattered for their lives. I breathed a sigh of relief. Looking down at Haoming's body on the ground, it was already frozen solid and contorted. I pulled a thick curtain over the window to block the breach. The 3 ice lizards lay by my feet, purring softly as if trying to comfort me. The next day, I used steel plates to permanently seal the windows. I also used more ice crystal powder to craft additional cooling sprays. I planted these ice fog bombs evenly all around the villa. If anyone tripped the wires, they would detonate a cryogenic blast that instantly caused severe frostbite. I accidentally became a terrifying legend whispered among the survivors. Rumors were the best protection. I ignored them. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. The outdoor temperature stabilized at a hellish level. The surface was a purgatory. Cities were ruins, rivers ran dry, but my air raid shelter remained at a constant 18 degrees Celsius. The 10 ice lizards acted like obedient dogs, patrolling the cave. They had grown to the size of golden retrievers. The cold air they produced was enough to keep the massive space cool. 999 preservation scrolls kept all my supplies as fresh as the day I bought them. And the rift at the deepest part of the cave became a door connecting to worlds. Han became a regular. His supply bundles got bigger each time, aside from ice crystals and scrolls. He started bringing much more practical things. Glowing moss seeds for lighting, red wormstones that emitted heat, and intricately carved ice containers. In exchange, the food I gave him grew increasingly abundant. One day, when the rift opened, he brought me an invitation. Fairy sister, the chief wants to meet you. This is a pass. It's up to you if you want to come. He handed me an ice blue token. I took it. It felt smooth and warm. That night, I couldn't sleep. In this scorching hellscape, I was holding a ticket to a world of ice and snow. An ice lizard nudged my hand. I rubbed its head and muttered to myself, "Tell me. Am I being a bit too greedy?" Surprisingly, it actually nodded. In that moment, I made my decision. At 11 o'clock p.m. the next night, holding the token, I stepped through the rift. The sensation was surreal. A wave of coolness enveloped me. followed by bone-piercing cold. A Han quickly draped a thick fur cloak over my shoulders. The world before my eyes came into focus. A village made entirely of ice. The transparent houses looked like crystal palaces. The streets were paved with packed snow. And the air was so fresh it made me want to cry. Welcome to Frostfall Town. The chief was an old man with frostbite scars on his face. But his eyes were extraordinarily bright. He led many townsfolk to welcome me at the entrance and prepared a grand feast in the largest ice house. We sat around a warm stone fire, sharing the canned foods I brought as a return gift. They served snow yam porridge, ice plate salads, and a blue berry called frost fruit. It was sweet and tart, melting the moment it touched my tongue. A Han's little sister, Zhao Yu, shyly handed me an ice sculpture of a rabbit. My brother says, "You're a fairy from a warm place." I like fairy, sister. The softest part of my heart melted instantly. After the feast, the chief took me up to an observation deck. From there, you could overlook the entire valley. The distant ice mountains glinted coldly under the pale sunlight. Both of our worlds are marching toward destruction, just in different ways. Chief, what are you trying to say? For the sake of both our worlds, we should form a true alliance. Not just trading supplies to drag out our miserable existences. We should exchange research and learn from each other, so we can both survive. The chief then led me to the village's ice cave library. Thousands of thin ice plates were embedded in the walls, carved with text and diagrams. This is our accumulated knowledge over thousands of years on how to survive in extreme cold, build, plant. And within this, there must be wisdom to combat extreme heat. I suddenly realized this was no longer just simple bartering. These were to civilizations struggling on the brink of apocalypse, reaching out to grasp each other's hands. Upon returning to my shelter, my mind was crystal clear. The ice lizards gathered around me. I crouched down to pet them. Looks like we're going to be very busy from now on, over the next month. I became the messenger between the two worlds. Every day during the 2 hours the rift opened, I traveled between the scorching hell and the frozen wasteland. From Frostfall Town, I brought back ice crystal mining techniques, low-temperature architectural knowledge, and ancient records on ice plates. And from my world, I brought them solar power blueprints, thermal insulation samples, and all the heat survival research I could find. The most amazing thing was, the light moss seeds from Frostfall Town actually flourished in my shelter. This moss not only provided light, but it purified the air. I planted a massive patch of it. The air became as fresh as a forest after the rain. Han and Zhao Yu became my assistants. Zhao Yu had an incredible affinity for ice crystals and could judge their purity barehanded. Han built a temperature adaptation training camp in Frostfall Town using warm stones and special furs to help the townsfolk slowly adapt to higher temperatures. Meanwhile, I didn't forget about my own world. I upgraded the ice fog defenses around the villa, designing a smart trigger system so it only activated against those with malicious intent. I also set up a relief point outside my defensive perimeter where I dropped basic supplies and crystal-cooled water every day. I established a strict rule: 1 ration per person per day, no fighting allowed. Violators would face the consequences. From that day on, more and more people gathered at the relief point. These people, struggling to survive the apocalypse, actually lined up in an orderly fashion every day. Some even volunteered to maintain order. Sometimes I wondered, if Li Yukei's family could see this, would they come back to life out of sheer rage? 3 months later, one evening, When the rift opened, I once again stepped into Frostfall Town. We followed the circuitry blueprints you brought, combined them with ice energy, and activated the mechanism. The chief led me down a corridor with a warm stone lantern. At the end of the passage was a circular hall. In the center stood a statue of a woman, holding fire in one hand and ice in the other. Her face filled with compassion. An inscription was carved into the pedestal. The chief stared at it for a long time before translating. When extreme heat meets severe cold, hope will return. Remember, survival is not about hoarding, but sharing. Civilization is not about conquering, but connecting. That night, the chief formally presented his plan at the town meeting. His burning gaze locked onto me. We want to use the rift as the core, to build a stable trans-dimensional hub, not just to connect our two worlds, but to search for other surviving worlds. Heat, cold, floods, droughts, apocalypses have many faces, but the will to survive is the same. So, Miss Lee, would you be willing to become the first guardian of the hub? All eyes focused on me. Han, Zhao Yu, the familiar townsfolk, and the ice lizards that had somehow crowded around the rift's edge. In a flash, so many things crossed my mind. The sweltering nights in the Lee family's storage room, the desperate struggle for a single sip of water in my past life, the final madness of the Lee family, and the hope shining in the eyes of the people at the relief point. I accept. The chief smiled. That scarred face looked incredibly warm under the glow of the warm stones. I became the guardian of the hub, living in the newly expanded air raid shelter. One side of the cave led to the extreme heat world. The relief point there had developed into a small, thriving community. The survivors helped each other, and had even started cultivating heat-resistant crops indoors. The other side of the cave connected to Frostfall Town. The townsfolk had built greenhouses, using warm stones and special materials to grow the crops I brought over. Children now had healthy color in their cheeks, and the elderly no longer feared the freezing winters. As for the rift, we have now successfully connected to a third world. It is a planet completely submerged by floods,